Okay, so for today's read aloud, we are going to be learning about something called the Lost Colony. And I want you to listen carefully to this read aloud to hear the main ideas or the important points about England's first try to establish a colony in North America. And you're going to hear about this first settlement attempt. Like I said, it's called the Lost Colony. And I want you to predict, make a guess about why you think this settlement has that name. Okay, I think all of you are going to recognize this story because we learned about it in social studies. Okay, let's get started. By 1542, Spanish explorers had claimed a large part of South America, all of Central America, and parts of North America. This did not go unnoticed by the kings and queens of England, France, Portugal, and the Netherlands. They too sent their explorers off to the New World to claim land and riches for their homelands. Spain had already conquered much of Central and South America, so other European nations concentrated on claiming parts of North America. Before long, there was a race to claim land for these European kings and queens. The settlement and eventual colonization of this part of the New World had begun. Soon, European countries realized that not only could they explore the land for new riches, but they could trade with the people who were already living there. European traders traveled to North America to exchange goods with Native Americans. As a result, some Native Americans learned to speak a little French or English. In turn, many Europeans learned to speak native languages, such as Algonquin, as well. So this map is really important because it shows us all of the places in the New World that were inhabited or colonized by different countries. And here's our key here. So you can see this yellow color is the places that England had conquered. So this is like what is now New England today, and some parts of Canada. The French, like we learned, were in parts of Canada, like what is now Quebec. And this blue color is what the Spanish had conquered. So like they conquered Florida and the Southwest, like California, also South America. This is Central America. So people were fighting to get land. In the late 1500s, England was becoming more and more alarmed, or shocked and disturbed, at how much land the Spanish were claiming at what is now called Central and South America. The Spanish were not only gaining land, they were becoming wealthier too. It was time for the English to take action. In the 1580s, an English explorer named Sir Walter Raleigh set out to explore parts of North America. During this expedition, he landed on an island called Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now the state of North Carolina. Raleigh returned home, eager to claim this land for England. In 1585, he persuaded Queen Elizabeth I to allow him to send a group of settlers to Roanoke Island. Queen Elizabeth agreed. However, when the settlers got there, they found it difficult to survive in this new land. This was especially true in the winter, because they weren't able to plant crops. When the settlers ran out of food, many people starved to death. As soon as they could, the demoralized settlers returned to England. In April 1587, the English made a second attempt to settle on Roanoke Island. This time, a man named John White led more than 100 men, women, and children, including his own daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband, to establish a colony in the New World. Once again, the settlers faced the same challenges, and their supplies ran low. However, this time, only John White and a small crew sailed back to England for supplies, while the others remained in the colony. Just 9 days before he returned to England, his daughter had a baby and named her Virginia Dare. White's granddaughter was the first English baby born in the New World. When White and his crew arrived back in England, he learned that the country was at war with Spain, and he would not be allowed to return to Roanoke Island. It was not until 1590 that he was able to take a ship and return to the colony. When White finally arrived back in Roanoke Island, what do you think he found? Sadly, he found nothing. Well, the island was still there, along with some abandoned dwellings, but the colonists were nowhere to be found. White's only clue to where the colonists might have gone was the word Croatoan, carved into one tree trunk, and the letters Crow carved into another. See, Croatoan. Croatoan was believed to be the name of an island about 50 miles south of Roanoke Island. John White thought the carving might have been a message that the settlers relocated to that island. John White tried to go to Croatoan Island to find the colony, but a huge storm damaged his ship and forced the crew to return to England. White was never able to return to the New World again. The mystery of what happened to these English settlers remains unsolved today. Roanoke Island has become known as the Lost Colony. Is the story starting to sound familiar? So, this man, John White, he never even got to see his daughter again because she mysteriously disappeared. One reason many English settlers struggled to survive was because they weren't prepared for how different their lives would be in this new land. It took several attempts before they figured out how to survive in a place where the climate, soil, landscape, plants, animals, and people were quite different from anything they had known before. Eventually, the colonists learned how to use the natural resources that were available to them, and they became less reliant on supplies from England. And so, after a number of difficult years and false starts, England eventually established small settlements up and down the east coast of North America. Initially, these settlements were nothing more than tiny villages. Over time, the villages became towns. By the 1700s, many of the towns had grown into cities that were centers of trade and industry. In the end, 13 successful English colonies were established in North America. As the 13 English colonies began to take shape, they were naturally divided into 3 distinct regions: the New England, Middle Atlantic, and Southern regions. These regions were different from each other in many ways. For example, in New England, because of the colder climate, rocky terrain, and poor soil, it was difficult for the colonists to farm many crops. Instead, New England became known as a center for fishing, furs, timber, and shipbuilding. In the Middle Atlantic region, a wide variety of crops could be grown because of the milder climate and rich soil. As a result, agriculture, including cattle and wheat farming, became a successful way of life for many. In the warm, sprawling southern region, people created large farms called plantations, where they could grow large amounts of different crops, such as rice and tobacco. People came to North America at different times and for many different reasons. Some came to get rich, whereas others came for religious reasons. Some hoped to escape poverty, and some were simply curious or adventurous. English monarchs played an important role in the establishment of the colonies, particularly Elizabeth I, James I, Charles I, Charles II, and George II. As we travel on our journey, we will refer to the regional map of colonial America, the Royal Portrait Gallery, and a timeline we will create together. So, are you ready to go on a journey? Good. We are going to begin next time in Jamestown, Virginia. Okay, so that's the end of the read aloud. What you're going to do is you are going to open up your activity book and, wrong page. You're going to go to activity page 1.3. And what you need to do is, these are some descriptions that you're going to read about different things we've learned about the Vikings, the Lost Colony, about the European explorers, and you're going to draw a picture of each of these things right here where it says illustration. And also in this box here, you're supposed to order the events. So you're going to decide what happened first, what happened next, what happened last, okay? So, for example, do we think the European explorers came before or after the Viking explorers? If you remember, Viking explorers probably came first. So you're probably going to want to put a 1 right here, okay? When you're done with this, you're going to read chapter 1 in your reader, and you're going to fill in this map, which is a map of the 13 colonies. This is activity page 1.2. Okay, so go ahead and get started.